Six Plants, Five Strings, episode 3. We're going to go over everything we did in flower. Alright, so we made it to flower, and what can I say? This is when the buds start stacking and the aroma start to permeate through the tent. Obviously, we've been doing some stem rubs up to this point, and we know what some of these smell like and some of these don't, because I've only grown, the only one I've grown more than once on this run was the Godfather OGs and the cream and cheese. And they honestly, the cream and cheese is consistent. That smell is consistent, but the Godfather OG this round was putting off a lot more of the funk that I'm looking for. Now everything else, I can't pinpoint what the terps are. I'm glad I'm going to be able to run them again, because the Girl Scout cookies was phenomenal as far as the aromas that it was producing, and so was the THC bomb. Now, we'll get to the smoke report at some point, but definitely as far as terps was concerned, this is probably what everybody loves about flower. Not only seeing the bud structures form, but just smelling the aromas that come from the tent. I mean, I'm constantly opening that tent just to get a whiff. I'm not gonna lie. All right, now that we've covered the early stages of flower, we can actually cover the rest. And it was pretty self-explanatory. Like I told you, it's the same as veg. Once these things get going and they start flowering, they really just grow on their own. So instead of just, showing you day by day exactly how it went, let's just talk about some of the lessons that I learned during this stage of flower. Despite it being smooth sailing, I think some of the things that tripped me up during flower was, once again, the 5 different varieties, 6 different plants in one 2x2. But not only that, it's the fact that they were in different pot sizes. So if you think about it, each plant is going to have a different water requirement, right? So I would say that my watering schedule wasn't up to par. That is something that I do need to improve on and stay a little bit more diligent. I think I was letting it dry out a little too much too often. And that definitely probably stressed them out, but a little stress can go a long way. So it is what it is. Sometimes it's not a bad thing to, let them have a full dry period, and just, I guess it's just not good when you let them wither away a little bit. When you start seeing those signs of needing water, if you do that too often, I could see how that's going to affect your harvest. Another thing that I feel tripped me up was not staying on top of my feeding schedule. I think I was doing okay with, I was giving them 444. I was trying to do it every month, and I wasn't even giving them a lot. I usually tend to underfeed. To be honest, and I just look for signs to see if they need a little bit more. But I think this round, I definitely didn't do a good job when it came to feeding. So I think that is something that I need to obviously get better at, and that is something I'm taking away from this run. All right, another thing I think I messed up on during this run is canopy management. Again, the different varieties that I was growing, they obviously stretched out a little different, and that's something I did have to struggle with during these few first weeks of flower, was trying to keep track of what plant is growing faster than others to try to keep things as even as possible. But we got through it, and obviously now I know which ones are the taller ones and which ones are going to be more comparable to grow with each other, I guess. Like for instance, the Girl Scout cookies, the White Widow, and the THC bomb can all grow together because they have similar stretching. They kind of, all 3 was like along the same height. Everything else can pretty much go together, which is the cream and cheese, the Godfather OG, and I think that was it. Yeah, I think those two are the ones that actually were a little bit more shorter, and so you know I was able to manage those that part of the canopy a little bit better. So yeah, I think when it comes to mistakes for flower during the flowering period was definitely not having a good watering schedule, not staying on top of feeding, and not being able to manage the canopy as well as I wanted to. That really did, now that I think about it, not being able to manage that canopy pretty much was I was struggling to expose all the possible bud sites. So some things were just overshadowing another, and certain things were just like overcrowding the other. So lesson learned, but it is what it is. Despite the minor inconveniences, the little minor headaches of having so many different cultivars in one 2x2 tent, I was actually pretty happy during flower because of this is the time when they start to develop. The buds really start to stack. The smells come out like I was saying earlier, and so it's kind of rewarding when you look at it. You open the tent and you see these things, especially when you like somebody like me, right? Who started a couple years ago. I started in 2018. I stopped for a little bit, and then again I picked it back up in 2021. I think it was the same year that my son was born, 2020, 2021. I started like while my wife was still pregnant with him, and so I sucked back then. Every time, but even then during flower, I was still excited. I would be happy no matter how small the plants were back then. I didn't yield shit, obviously, and so to see where I was then to where I've come now, it just obviously just serves as more motivation to keep learning, to keep growing, pun intended. So again, let's take a look at some of these buds and just appreciate the plant for what it is. So I was able to actually get them to about 9 weeks. 9 weeks, almost 10, and I feel like if I would have pushed it to the full 10, then they would have gotten even better. The reason why I pushed it for 9, some was actually ready by week 8, to be honest. But I had my calendar mixed up because the date that I put for the start of flower, I just named it week 0, and I just kind of went from there. And so by the time I actually realized it, I was like, oh, I'm actually a week behind in my head when I'm really a week ahead in real time, if that makes any sense. But so as I was checking the trichomes, I was actually surprised to see how they were developing pretty fast in my head, but really it was right on time. So I don't really have a ratio of, oh, you gotta wait for this percentage of amber versus this. No, I just look for a decent amount of amber, some cloudy, a lot of cloudy ones, and obviously very, very little clear ones. That's really all I look for. I don't know what percentages that is, and I actually do go from section to section on the buds, on the plant, I should say, branch to branch, and I go inspecting the entire plant and kind of see where I'm at, because in some cases you have a couple of branches that are heavily ambered up, but then if you keep going and keep searching, you might find some that are still underdeveloped. So it's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly when, but as you go, you start to really notice, hey, I want to, and then especially when you're growing them back to back, if you're growing the same cultivars back to back, and you push it, let's say one grow, you harvest at 8 weeks, one grow, you harvest at 9, one you harvest at 10 weeks, right? So you get to experiment and see which is going to work for you, which is the best time frame to finish it for you, because everybody's different, everybody's palate's different, and this is the beauty of growing at home. You're curating your own menu, you're curating your own flavors. I do want to point out that something I should have mentioned earlier is, sometimes it is better to grow monocultures because you get to study the plant. Like, I know the cream and cheese kind of like the back of my hand. I knew exactly what to expect, and I was kind of amazed at myself of remembering, how to actually take care of that plant. It's like muscle memory. Even though I didn't run it for a couple of cycles. The second she started to flower, I'm like, oh, I remember this. I know exactly what's gonna happen, and that's like the best branchiest one that I had that produced like the most top sites. So I really would love to breed with the cream and cheese at some point. See if we can get this kind of branching on with different flavors. But like I said, when I was growing the cream and cheese, I was only growing that strain back to back for like 3 runs. Like I spent the whole year just growing that one strain, and you learn about it, right? So like in this strain, I could say in this run, the White Widow really kicked my ass. The White Widow was never happy. The White Widow was always droopy, no matter how much water I gave it, no matter when I fed it, no matter how much light I was giving it, if I was adjusting the light up and down. Like nothing, I'm telling you, nothing made that plant happy until this day. It was hard to clone. I just finally got a clone of it to root recently. I had to re-veg the plant, and it's still not happy. I think I mentioned that last video. I might have mentioned that last video. I don't know. But it's just interesting how everything else in the tent can be thriving. And it was very rare that I saw that that I saw that White Widow actually praying to the light, or just in any way, shape, or form happy. It made me wonder, like, what the hell am I doing wrong? And I don't know what it is about that plant. It was old seed stock, so I don't know if that had anything to do with it. Maybe it was a heavier feeder, and I didn't know, because I do tend to underfeed. But these are things that you learn if you're growing it. At least if you're growing it by itself, you'll definitely learn it better. But if I wasn't growing so many, maybe if I had just 1 or 2 or 3 at most, then I could pay more attention to it and actually, I guess, find the nuances of the plant. But with that being said, I unfortunately did not have many pictures post-harvest, or much video post-harvest, and I went through it pretty quickly. I did end up with about a quarter pound. I would say in total, definitely about a quarter pound. The Godfather OGs was the 2 least yielding plants, but I would say that in solid buds, I could say altogether definitely a quarter pound. So this is the biggest harvest that I had. I was able to fill 4 big mason jars and 2 little mason jars. So to me, that's a win. Obviously, I was able to have some smoke for a good month. I definitely went through that pound in like a month. I went through that QP in about a month, if not less. So that is unfortunate in my end. But as far as smoke report, I can tell you that the cream and cheese is definitely flavorful. Like I remember, it has a kind of like a grapefruit kind of a taste to it. It isn't that citrusy kind of around. It has a little bit of a funk to it, but not that much when it comes to the nose. Now, as far as translation to the smoke, it was a little bit on the like more pungent, harsher side. Unfortunately, like it was a little bit harsher than I remember, and I waited too. Well, to be honest, I was smoking a lot of it pre-cure, just because that's just how I am. I just keep digging into the into the jars. When you don't have weed and you're growing weed, you're gonna smoke it, no matter what stage of the cure it's in. But I guess by the time I did cure for 2 weeks, it did get a little bit smoother. I enjoyed it. It definitely had more of the effects than last time I grew it. Like it just was a little bit stronger in my opinion. As before, I felt like I had to smoke a lot of it in order to feel the effects. With this one, I was actually feeling kind of nice after one joint, so that's not bad. The Godfather OGs were the 2 least yielding plants, but I would say that the Godfather OG Pheno 2 definitely was the more gassier of the 2, and that is the only Pheno that I kept out of the 2. It was the only one that I was able to get clones of. So that actually worked out in my favor, because that is the terp profile that I'm looking for, and it did translate to the smoke as well. So I was kind of happy that I do have some kind of a OG kind of a taste. Like it's not 100% that gas that I want, but it's there. You know what I mean? Like it is funky. So when I grow it again, obviously I'm gonna try to monoculture that one as well. and try to get the most out of it, and then I can give you true flavor and smoke report. Um, let's see. THC bomb was phenomenal. THC bomb was great. That one was like the tallest stretcher. It had some of the nicer nugs, and the smell was just crazy. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. I don't know what to compare it to. I don't know. It's not like it's not like it smells like a fruit. It's not like it smells like a candy. It just has like a unique smell, a unique profile that I need to smell more of it to really get a grasp of it. As far as smoke, I would say that the effects were definitely there. It was something I'm gonna keep around. It smoked good. From what I remember, the taste definitely was there. It translated as far as it left a little bit of like terps on your lips and in your mouth, if that makes sense. Pause. So you do get a little bit of flavor experience while you're smoking, which makes it a little bit better. So the same for the Girl Scout cookies. The Girl Scout cookies actually was smelling amazing as well. Very different than I'm used to. And also, Girl Scout cookies was a little bit harder to identify as far as smell as well. It did not have a traditional cookies terp profile that you would expect. But once again, another one that was just amazing, and happy that I grew it out. You know what I mean? So the White Widow was definitely one that was a classic weed funk. Like, this is the shit that you remember back in the day that you would just call weed. Nothing crazy, nothing major. It's just weed. It just smells like weed, man. Finally, I got some weed that smells like weed. So the White Widow was definitely one that I enjoyed. I was reaching for that jar constantly. That was the number one. Number two was the Girl Scout cookies and THC bomb, and then everything else came under that. Like, White Widow was fantastic. So the White Widow, definitely, I'm happy that I was able to root that one and get that one going so that I can grow that over again. And that one I am going to take my time with. I am definitely going to make sure that I learn that plant inside and out, because I want to preserve this smell, this terp, just like, and the effects, man. The effects, that was probably the one that hit me the hardest out of all of them. Even stronger than the OG, in my opinion. One joint of that was enough to, I was able to actually smoke half or a little bit over half, and I was okay putting it out. And that's the kind of bud that I like. I want to be able to put it out halfway and then enjoy it again when I relight it, and that way I can conserve. Like, I don't want to smoke 2 or 3 joints just to get to where I need to be in terms of effects. That just doesn't make any sense. So yeah, White Widow is, again, probably the best one out of all of them, despite the issues that I had with it while it was growing. So the most fickle one turned out to be the most pungent one, the most hard-hitting one. But yeah, this brings the seed to harvest to a close, man. Like, I think I learned my lesson as far as cramming this many plants in this many size pots, into a 2x2. I think I understand my limits now, which is why, if you stay tuned and you like, comment, and subscribe, and make sure that you stay tuned for future videos, you'll see what I ended up doing currently, which is putting 18 plants in this 2x2. But here's the kicker: they're all in the same size pot, so I think that'll help me out this time.